And welcome to our webinar, which is we can say the short version of the results of the AURES project, which has been running for the last 3 years. So I will start by just just saying a couple of words about the project. So it was one of the first research or coordination projects in Europe that was specifically dedicated to auctions for renewable energy support. And the background, of course, being at that time the new stated guidelines from the European Commission that have demanded to introduce competitive bidding processes gradually from 2015 onwards and full rollout from 2017, which is already started now. So what did we want to do in the AURES project? Our goals were to identify auction types and designs which are specifically applicable for renewable energy, because in Europe they are quite a new measure for supporting renewables. We also analyzed the effect and design options under different market conditions, because this is very important to have good or successful auctions. And we looked into some lessons learned and best practices from auction implementations across Europe and the world. So who are we? We are, as I said, a coordination and support action under the European Horizon 2020 program, and the project has been running for 3 years now, and we are in our final month. We are 8 partners from 7 different European countries. You can see them here, and DTU is the project coordinator of the consortium. Just to start off with some basics, a typical renewable energy auction is a procurement auction, which means that there is an agency, typically a government agency, that issues a call for tenders in auction to install a certain amount, capacity of renewable energy. So the driver behind these auctions is typically policymakers who would like to have renewable energy, more renewable energy in the system. And the auctions are typically around concessions for support payments. They can also be direct power purchase agreements. And once the call has been submitted and the auction is going on, there will be usually project developers who submit sealed bids, very typical. And then the best bids are selected and long-term agreements are made. You can see this small illustration here. So usually it works like this, that the cheapest bids, the ones who require the lowest support levels, are selected, and they are the successful bids, and they have then will be granted the concession to be constructed and operated. Okay, so when we started out, we quickly identified some benefits and challenges of auctions, and this is just to give the ground level. We of course have come much more into detail, and we will talk more about that later on. But potential benefits of auctions are, of course, that's one of the major drivers that we see, that we would like to get a price competition among the bidders and have thereby determined the support levels by the market. And this, of course, is the hope that this will lead to efficient outcomes on support level determination and also efficient outcomes on selection of projects. That means that only those projects are built which are cheap. Another benefit that we see, and also policymakers seem to being very important, is volume and budget control. That means when auctioning out a certain volume of renewable support, the policymakers can control the overall support burden, and this is an increasing issue in many markets, in many countries. Of course, there are some challenges related to that. We have seen low realization rates, so there is a risk that not all of the awarded bidders, awarded projects are actually going to be built. And this, of course, needs to be handled because the aim of the auction in the first place is to get renewable energy generation up and running. And if these projects are not realized, you might lose some of the effectiveness of your support scheme, and you might not reach all the targets that you set. There are also higher risks related to participating in an auction as compared to participating or as compared to receiving support on the other renewable schemes. These higher risks usually favor bigger players, and they might also increase costs. So we have also had a look at this. And another point that we've seen is that auctions is a market instrument, and it has several different implications for the participants than previous support schemes where there is no direct competition between the different players. And one of these implications is strategic bidding that might occur, and that is very closely related to the auction design. And why is this a problem? If strategic bidding occurs, it will conceal true costs, and then, of course, the whole efficiency argument that we target, that was the reason why we wanted to introduce auction, might be compromised. So just to give a short overview on the project, what I will do now is I will give you a short sweep through over the overall project, and after that David will take over and give you some insights on the results that we have had in the project. So the way we structured AURES was we made some target-oriented analysis in different areas, some empirical analysis, some experiments, some simulations, and we have also been out there in the real world with policymakers who are implementing auctions. And then we also have had a lot of capacity building activities, workshops, webinars. We've done a lot of meetings, and also we have built some policymaking tools in the project that we will mention later on. So I will just go through some of these activities now. We started out by some framing and conceptual aspects, which just should show you here that we've done a lot of analysis regarding what are specific design elements, how can they be assessed, or the success of auctions, what criteria should be based for the assessment, and what kind of effects on system and bidder level they would have. So this looks quite complicated. This is just to show you that we have done a lot of the analysis, what design elements have which effects on what levels, and how are they interrelated to the different success criteria. And that was actually very necessary because we found that there was not a lot of common language regarding auctions in renewable energy at that time. So I really hope that we have contributed a lot to this kind of common language and the understanding behind the different aspects. And just to make it a little more simple, successful renewable auctions, they cannot only be assessed based on efficiency. This is what we call static efficiency, which means the cheapest projects are built. But this is also this is only one element of different criteria that needs to be looked at when assessing auctions. Of course, the effectiveness is also important, and we define this as realization rate, so how much of the awarded bids actually are being realized. Then we also, of course, we have effects on dynamic efficiency. The best auction design, the most optimal auction design will not be successful if it's not feasible on a legal level, on a social political level, if local impacts are not sufficiently accounted for. So this is so we have taken this approach of assessing auctions based on this whole range of different criteria. And then we have looked into these what could be suitable formats for renewable auctions and what design elements. And again, this is just to show you there are a lot of different elements, and we have listed them and described them. What you can see on the left-hand side, there are some general auction design elements, and these are very common, so they are not related to renewable support auctions. Every auction in the world has to have defined selection criteria. Should that be based on prices or different criteria? What should the auction format be? What should be auctioned out? Only a single item or different items at the same time? Different type of items. Or should the auction type be? Should it be a static sealed bid auction or a dynamic auction with many auction rounds? You have to decide on the pricing rules. So there are lots of general design elements that we've gone through and also assessed in specifically for renewable auction and their applicability. And then there are lots of very specific auction design elements that are really only occurring for renewable energy. And this is, of course, the relation to the volume and the building out. So there are different, should you auction out megawatts or megawatt hours? So this is very specific because it's such a technical auction, you could say, a technical system the renewable will get into. What should the support be? There are many different remuneration types, investment-based, feed-in premiums, and how do they actually affect the choice of auction as well? How do they interact? Also the duration of the contract, the frequency. Then there's a lot of questions around diversity, technology diversity. Should there be geographical diversity? And this is also, especially for this kind of auction where we have a homogeneous product, which is renewable energy, which can actually be produced in many different ways by different technologies, different geographical areas, different actors. And this needs to be handled in the auction because of the homogeneous product. It cannot be seen in the market. So certain design elements should be or must be considered if diversity should be accounted for in the auction. Then there are also technical elements regarding pre-qualification criteria and penalties, which we have looked at. So this is just to give you the big picture of all the different elements there are, and a little bit more simplified, some questions that you go through when you design auction. So you should decide on what is auction. Should it be a certain technology or different technologies in the same auction? What should be the support? How much can you auction? The volume. How should the winners be selected? Should it be a price only or different criteria? How should the price be determined as a pay-as-bid? That means that every bidder, every project will receive exactly what they have bid, or a uniform price, a pay-as-cleared, as we see, that will be similar to the wholesale spot markets that we see at the moment on the electricity side. So there are different pros and cons related to each of these answers. And then, of course, should there be special bidding rules, caps, floors, and safeguards like pre-qualification? So these are all the questions, and we will later come to some of the answers. Yeah, when we're looking at the different auction types, we've done an assessment. This is just to illustrate some what we've done, different pay-as-bid, uniform pricing, and gone through many of the criteria and see what impact they have. So in general, what we've found is that there are the chances and risks that occur on these different auction types. They have impact on the level of competition that you can achieve in the auction, the uncertainties, and there was also the cost, transparency, and there was also the choices regarding bids. There might be asymmetric beliefs in the bidding. The repeated conduction is also very important. So do you have a very frequent auction schedule, or is this a one-time auction? This also has a lot of implications. So that should be also thought in when deciding on the auction type and default risks by bidders. What we've also done is, in order to assess this, we looked into other industries. There are industrial procurement auctions. We've seen auctions in telecommunication licenses, also refinancing operations, and oil and gas leases. I will not get much into detail here, but you can find that in our report and the conclusions that we've drawn. What we've done as well is to look into empirical auctions, or a lot of different auction implementations that we've seen in 12 European countries and 8 non-European countries. And David will give examples on that. We've done some model-based analysis. So this is just an example. We've made a cash flow model where we can analyze private investment incentives. So not only we can analyze, but you can analyze. So you can download this model. It's based on Excel to look in and quantify non-strategic bid prices, expected support levels. And we've seen this as a tool for policymakers when assessing auction designs and making impact assessments. We've also made a large energy system model, or we have made an improvement of an existing, the GreenX existing energy model, where we can analyze impact on different auction designs on whole energy systems. And there we created an agent-based model that can take into account these strategic incentives for bidders, and then also show effects of different auction designs on this. For example, financial and physical pre-qualifications. And we've applied that for the UK CFD scheme. We've seen that there is a higher likelihood of strategic bidder behavior if there are no penalties. Interestingly, this does not come at the disadvantage of lower price outcomes. Does not come with benefit of lower price outcomes if there are no penalties. So we've also done an auction experiment. This is just to show you, we generated some knowledge, having different auction schemes where we had sessions with subjects. They are usually students, and then we make some auction simulations with them. And this is very important because we've seen that in the theory or theoretical literature, there are a lot of statements about auctions which do not reflect the whole complexity of the real world. And for that, it is rather difficult to predict auction outcomes and optimal designs. And this is especially true in renewable energy because it's such a complicated system, complicated interrelations, especially with the technical scheme. We have a partner in the consortium, TACON, who have been working on auctions and counseling on auction designs for many, many years. And this was the first project they have done on renewable energy, and they thought it was really interesting because it was so nice and complicated. They have not seen more exciting auction designs before. So let's go to the next slide. So we have also done some implementation cases. That was 4 cases with policymakers in Denmark, Germany, the UK, and in Austria. We've made quite a lot of effort into policymaking support and joint analysis on pressing issues. And it also generated knowledge for us on implementation processes that we then, of course, delivered further to new to new implementations. And one of our major results is this policy support toolbox. We call it the auction designer, where you can, this is on our webpage, where you can just go in and the toolbox will guide you through the whole design process of an auction, asking the most important questions related to auctions, and then gives design options and recommendations regarding different choices. So that is one of the major results in this project. Just a last comment. This project is, as I said in the beginning, very much focused on auctions for renewables, but of course we also should consider this big question if auctions at all are the preferable option for renewable support. So we also looked into alternatives and made comparative assessments between auctions and other support instruments. So we've seen price reductions induced by recent auctions, but we see also that low price isn't everything, we can say. And there are a lot of other policy goals, we call them secondary policy goals, in many of our analysis. For example, actor diversity, technology diversity, and they might be challenged when using auctions. So, so there might be a trade-off, and we've shown that in some of the publications that we've had. The next step then, of course, is to look into hybrids. So what happens if auctions are used in conjunction with other instruments, for example, an existing premium system that's in place and auctions that are being implemented. We've seen that in several countries, especially in Europe now, where renewable support schemes are already in place, and auctions are being implemented by many countries. And of course, here it's very important to look into the impact on the bidders' incentives, because a lot of these premium schemes, if they are in place for the same technologies, the same scope, they might act as floor prices in the auction, for example. So there are some incentives that need to be taken care of. And what we've also seen that we've looked into these transitions between existing schemes and auctions, and they are, of course, obviously smoothest when they are planned and orderly, and there is an articulated trajectory regarding the transition. And we will see sunk costs, and they need to be handled. Okay, that was a big swipe through of many of the activities that we had in the project, and now David will go into some.
Hello everyone. Now let's take a look. My name is David. Now let's take a look at some of the key results and some of selection that we did for you. And let me start by, as Elena was mentioning, we ran an empirical analysis, and we were taking a look at 20 countries to understand how they did and get out of them some best practices. And here, what we are trying to show you is a summary of what different countries are doing. And just let me mention one of the findings that we had. If you look at technology focus, most of the countries that we analyzed have technology-specific auctions and very few multi-technological auction. This is the past, of course. This might be changed. We see that also because of the guidelines, countries should go for technological neutral auctions, and this might change the picture in the coming years. We also see that most of the countries had a volume cap. That has been very usual mechanism for the countries by implemented auctions. If you look at the auction format, it has been most of the time static, probably because of the efficiency and the implementation is easier than other schemes out there. And if we look at the pricing rule, which is very interesting to see, policymakers have a preference for pay as bid, where projects receive a an incentive or a promotion, a promotion for exactly the price that they want to get for the project. What else I can show you? Pre-qualification and penalties are always there, as you can see. Financial ones, probably you will see that some countries are asking for bonds, auction, to participate in the auction, you might have a bond. Probably you will need also bonds for, you are a winner, probably you will see that there are also bonds that you need to submit to the authorities to, guarantee the seriousness of the proposal. And if you look at also at the development stage, it might be that the auction is asking developers or investors to demonstrate that the project is maybe an advanced stage of the development to make sure that those projects will be realized. That's one of the mechanisms of this pre-qualification element that you have in the auction. Another one, which is related to pre-qualification and also the penalties, as I probably mentioned before. You want to guarantee the seriousness of the proposal, you want to increase the realization rate, and that's why penalties are implemented in the countries, and you see that most of the countries implemented penalties for delays, and at the same time, penalties for non-compliance. So in summary, this is what we have seen out of the countries that we analyze, and we are very looking forward to see how this continue developing. And just to give you some examples from the lessons learned and from the countries that we analyzed, let me focus your attention on the first two countries, Denmark and Ireland, where you see how the pre-qualifications or penalties work and what happens when they are not placed in the right way. You see that, for example, you will see there was no pre-qualifications on planning permissions. And by doing that, you will see that low realization rates were, the outcome was low realization rate, and even more with a combination of difficulties obtaining permission. So synchronize your auction design with the authorities giving, the permissions to developers, and you're not asking for pre-qualification to prove that these projects are ready to be built, you will have probably low realization rates. On the other side, we look at Denmark in our auction with option. In those years that we mentioned there on the slide, you will see that there were high delay penalties. And a high delay, of course, may scare developers. There must be maybe a high cost for them, and they will think twice before committing their resources for a high penalty. And that's why that might result on only few participants in the auction. And if you combine this with a strict schedule, in that case, and probably other opportunities out there, that's what happened in this auction in particular, that only one bid was submitted. So, this is a kind of to illustrate what happened if you are if you have a lack on pre-qualifications, and on the other side you have a high delay on penalties. Another example that we have is uniform price in Spain for a winner biomass auction. This is a special case where there was no an auction schedule, meaning that developers or investors didn't know if additional rounds were to happen. They didn't know if their pipeline could be realized in the future. And by having this only single chance to implement the project, they were very aggressive, and the result of the auction was a zero support outcome. We ask ourselves if those projects will be realized. We don't know that, but a key message here is that investors, especially when they have a pipeline, they need clarity about what is going on. It's going to be 3 rounds, 4 rounds, for how many years, what's the volume to be scheduled, and that guarantees that investors, have the certainty that they can continue developing projects because they will have a chance in the future to realize them. Okay, and now something interesting that one of our partners prepared, Ecofis, and before showing you some recent auction results, we have this funny here red box that we put on the slide, saying that whatever you see here, you need to be careful about how you compare the results, because that's one of the challenges when you look at the news, that you see, oh my God, this slide, for example, you see, oh my God, lowest prices in Europe, and then you will see that, oh my God, offshore wind farms have a subsidy-free power for the first time. It's excellent news, and everyone is happy about it, and everyone is talking about that, but you need to compare the numbers and really understand what is behind that to be able to compare what is going out there. And you will see, if you look at here, the result, this is an overall, outcome of solar PV in the last years. First of all, you will see, and this is the good news, the prices are getting low and low and low, with low record prices for solar, around 5 cents if you look at the last auction in Germany. But again, this is only just to show you the tendency, but you have to be careful when you compare them. The support period difference, if you look at here in France, it's only for 20 years. Sorry, for 20 years in France and Germany, and 15 years in the Netherlands. So, you need to understand what is behind that to be able to compare the numbers. Let me show you what is going on also in the onshore wind resource that we selected here. Same history, same tendency, prices are going down, good news. Again, of course, there are differences in the support mechanism behind them, and probably you filter these results according to the year of implementation, you will see a different tendency. It doesn't mean that those prices are the prices that you expect out of the energy today. Those are the prices that, in the auction or the participants in the auction expect to have in 2, 3, or 4 years, depending on the realization time of the auction. And this one is for offshore prices, where we see that technology innovation and high competition have led to decreasing offshore prices. You see here 2 countries showing these prices, and if you look at the red points at the right lower corner of the figure here, you will see zero support bids for the German offshore wind parks. A lot of discussion why that's possible, how they can manage to get this, and really to understand this, you need to understand what is behind the auction, and that's why we will have an additional webinar about the reasons behind these numbers. Our partner Ecofis will have a webinar on this date, but just to give you an overview of what we learned from this analysis is that definitely competition in auctions are contributing to decrease the prices, as you could see from the figures in the slide before. Finding the price by competing is making sure that all the technological changes and those innovations are reflecting the prices at the end. And again, it's important for us to point out that you need to consider the differences in the support framework to compare prices. And again, this will be explained much more in detail by our partner Ecofis in the coming webinar. Now I'd like to go through some of the conclusions that we have from our project. Very, general conclusions that we want to share with you. Of course, the competition is a crucial requirement for an efficient price formation. And of course, you secure competition by having a proper design tailor-made to the market conditions where specific countries the option is implemented. As we mentioned before, it's always a challenge to find out the right balance between pre-qualifications and penalties, because what you want at the end is to achieve seriousness of the bid. Of course, it is not easy to find not only the balancing, but to design the option, because you have many options there and design elements that we show you that, of course, affect the competition level and the ability to realize the project. So policymakers need to understand this and select the right balance to achieve their policy goals. And a last conclusion that we want to share with you in this case is that we are seeing that most of the EU countries are aiming at the lowest possible support cost and resulting in a preference for a pay-as-bid pricing rule. And that's why we are always saying when we are out there that no one size fits all. The design definitely needs to match the market environment. This is not a tailored a standard solution for everyone. It's not. And design flexibility for development and changes need to be there. So it's not a design and you implement it and it's going to be there for many years. No, the time evolves, the industry also evolves, and you need to adjust the design accordingly. And here are some good practices as well that we identified. Binding beams, of course, are important. You want to guarantee the seriousness and that those projects will be realized when participants are part of the auction. Criteria should be simple and clear. Of course, you are expecting, or investors are expecting that the auctions or the rounds that they take place are continuous, are transparent, so they know what they are expecting and they can weigh their chances to implement their pipelines. You need to make sure that you have participation, enhancing participation measures for stakeholders. Before implementing an auction, it's very important to share, the auction conditions with stakeholders before implementing that. So it's important also to understand what are the needs of the industry, how you synchronize the auction to make sure there is a high rate of participation. These kind of measures that you can have to make sure that you have a lot of participants to increase competition. Maybe another example is Q&A questions. People or stakeholders asking questions, the authorities answer them before the auction takes place, so everyone understands what is going on. Again, it's one recommendation from our side to implement both pre-qualification criteria and penalties to guarantee the seriousness of the participants. And something that we have also discussed a lot is the implementation of ceiling prices to give the market participants in the auction signal of what the prices should be, and also it's a way of the authorities to control the prices that they want to see at the end. Just to close what we were presenting the last 40 minutes, almost 40 minutes. In this slide you see all the findings and complete recommendations and all the reports that we have. We divided that by topics. So if you look at them, you find information that probably you are interested for, and by clicking there, you will get a report out of that. And of course, you are more than welcome to visit our webpage. You see that information on the webpage. You will see all the reports. You will see our auction tools, the auction designer, our cash flow tool, and all the information on the webinar, our workshops, our slides. We have our auction academy. So all the information that you need is there. And of course, if you have any questions, if you want to reach the consortium, of course, we are here to answer all your questions, and this is our contact details. So I think this is what we wanted to introduce to you. Thank you for your attention, and I think we are ready for, Lena and me are ready for some questions.